Just to let you know, I'm having all sorts of issues with my phone camera. I know it's not your problem, just to let you know. So when I clapped eyes on this kit, I couldn't wait to get hold of it. Got hold of it as soon as possible. I do love things like this. Now, I know there are people out there who will say that these kits have had their time. They should be put to rest. And I can sympathise with that. So yeah, it's showing its age. It's an old kit. But in there is a reasonably decent kit waiting to be built. Just takes a lot of effort and a bit of time. I keep hoping that manufacturers release these subjects. I mean, somewhere out there, there's a nuclear power station, a model of a nuclear power station. Back in the 60s, there was all sorts of subjects being released. Something I don't think you're going to see Tamiya or Airfix release. You never know. So it's only the end when I got to take the photographs that I realised how bland a submarine is. There are a couple of things that I could have added. The torpedo tubes I missed out. I could have added them. I was going to add some windows in the conning tower. I'm sure there should be windows up there. These things wouldn't take 2 minutes. Also, there are decals to add to identify this sub, but I want to keep it neutral. So let's get on and see what I did with this very old kit. Build and paint. Novel. So I've already had a quick look inside the box. When I bought the kit, I couldn't wait. But now we're going to have a closer look in detail. Now the paint guide I'm going to follow religiously, as I haven't got a clue what colour subs are inside or out, as I'll find out later. Frame layout. Parts not used, I'm curious. Are there other types of this sub? Oh, a nice bit of colour, red. Maybe I shouldn't be following the colour guide. Only joking. Now the illustrations are something a very good technical illustrator will be very proud of. Oh look, some lipstick to build and paint. So this is the area, stage 45, I'm a bit concerned about. With a kit this old, is everything going to fit? I will have to try and do a dry run first before adding paint or glue. The decal sheet looks nice and comprehensive, which thankfully will add some detail to this kit. So let's look at the plastic. Now I didn't realise until now that the bag wasn't sealed and there were a lot of parts floating around. Thankfully they're all there. Now a word of warning about these frames, it's not for the squeamish. So some of the surface detail may need to be removed before using the decals. Frame 2. Frame 3. Wow. Frame 4. Now this nose looks very suspicious in all sorts of ways. Your flexible friend, I hope. So the plan is, or should I say what I normally do, is I'm going to start cleaning up all the parts. And I'm going to start with the worst frame first, while my interest is still on a high. Here's an example. I wondered what in Greek buggery this was. After a few squints of the eyes, it became clear these are seats. So some work will have to be done to make that so. So a week or so, nearly 2 weeks has passed and I've cleaned up all the parts. The issue here is that I'll have to cross-reference the parts with the illustrations to know where they're all going, although that's never stopped me before. It's just that the illustrations here aren't very clear. So I'll start to assemble some of the plastic lumps, and we do have movable parts in this kit, and I do want to try and keep the ideology if I can. One of the other issues is because of the thickness of some of the plastic, we have a lot of simp marks around the walls here, or the bulkheads, as well as a lot of injector pin marks, of course. So the torpedoes and the Polaris missiles I will tackle later. I'm far too knackered after all that cleanup. I'll deal with them later. The hull parts are next, and I've decided to thin down the thickness of the plastic around the openings. Just need to make it look a bit more realistic. So with this build, I'm regularly cleaning up. I can't work too long in a messy environment. So next I need to see how all these parts interact with everything else. I don't start painting and assembling, or assembling and painting and find out that I've got fit issues. So with the aid of PVA glue, I'm going to build some of the main structures. These two parts here, I'm just going to tape up. Now using PVA glue isn't easy. It takes a lot longer to set than like liquid plastic would do. So it's all a bit flimsy. But I just want to get a rough idea. All jigged up, we'll let that glue set a day or so to dry. Looking all very iffy. Let's see what all this looks like Now I know it's not going to be precise, but it'll give me a good idea of any issues that I need to resolve before going on any further. We have to connect the two tower frames, but I'm not too worried about them. So we seem to have a large gap in between the floor and the sides. It's the best I'm going to get from this kit without major surgery. So with all the PVA glued parts, I shall unassemble it all and give it all a warm bath. The warm bath, by the way, is to loosen the PVA glue and to clean it off the surface. All very bright and shiny, but I missed a task out here, and I should have done this before washing the parts, and that was the removal of any surface detail where the decals are going to sit. The other issue I forgot about are the big gaps between the frames and the floors. So I've used some plastic strips to fill these gaps. A simple fix, and it looks so much better. So I'm just going to show you the only area for now that I've replaced in the kit so far, and that's this shaft. Next, I'm going to go through the illustrations or instructions and see what parts I can assemble that can be painted with ease, like these examples. I'm going to let all this set and use the floor as a jig. After the glue is set with these parts, I'm going to go around with extra thin glue just to smooth everything off. I'll assemble the floors around the periscopes. And I've decided here to replace one of the periscope shafts. The kit's part is oval in shape and has some subtle kinks in it. The rear parts here are all glued in place. Now here I've had to shim the back so that the rear cone fits flush with the body. Now the control surfaces needed to be added here, but I'll leave them off and fix them on later. Hopefully I will do some modifications so they can all still move. So on to adding some paint, and I'm still not too sure what process I'm going to go for or how I'm going to go about this. But the first thing that sprang into mind, maybe it's just an automatic process, is I'm going to add some black to some of the parts that face inwards. So the black added, and I may be wasting my time with that, but I've also added the red next. I couldn't wait. Next I'll add the silk grey, as they call it. I'll find a grey that looks good to me. And then a light grey followed by a fern green, as they call it. Now this grey shall be used for the silk grey. I don't want it to be too dark. You've got to remember that we've got an enclosed space here and we want to make the colours as light as possible, which may mean they're unrealistic. For the light grey, I've used a sea grey with a white added. The hull has had its so-called silk grey added, and I've faded off into the black. The green, I'll use this and I'll see what it looks like once it's dried. So I found that this green was too dark, so I've added some Tamar yellow. So with all the base colours applied, I'll pick out all the smaller details by brush. Although in hindsight, I wish I'd have airbrushed the missile tubes first, then the green. So all the other colours of the parts have been picked out and painted, which isn't many. Then everything is sealed in this varnish. But before I did that, I dry brushed some of this deck tan to pick out all that surface detail on the floor. Next onto the decals, just a matter of following the stages for the applications. I'm sorry, that was obvious, wasn't it? So we've got one for this panel, and on this panel we have three. So I've cut the carrier film out to the decal. This will help with the fit and also help with me not having to add tons of solution to make this all to seat nicely. So the only issue I had with the decals, because they all went down very well, was decal number 16. And after a lot of head scratching, I ended up placing it here. It might be wrong, but it fits nicely. Then just going to seal the decals in with this. So with everything left thoroughly to dry, I need to pick out all that surface detail on these parts. Now I did take some shots of this process, but by mistake I deleted them. So here goes a second time round. I'll use a custom mix of the Tamiya panel wash black and brown, and that gives me a nice oily colour mix. Then using some odourless thinner, this mix is thinned down considerably. Then using two brushes, one for the mix and one to add the clear thinner. The clear thinner is very lightly brushed onto the surface, and then the mix is placed on the raised detail. Then once this is all dried, I'll brush this with this onto this. Really? So I've gone ahead and added the two movable hatches. Not the best fit, really isn't the best fit. Now I could have replaced these doors and created some new ones with some plastic card, but because they're going to be fixed in the open position, nobody's going to know except you. So let's get all this assembled and hope that it all fits, because other than the bulkheads and the floors that were test fitted, I have no idea about the rest. Eyes down, here goes. So I'll be using PVA glue and extra thin on the assembled parts as I go. No, not together as a mix, separately. So I knew I'd have a bit of trouble around this area here with the seats and tables, in that there are a couple of holes already taken. I don't know why, and I'm not going to get into that. So I ended up cutting off the lugs or tabs, whatever you want to call them, so these tables and seats would fit. I do love this map of the world, it's so very James Bond. Still all looking a bit flimsy? Here I need to add the two periscopes, I think. Let's give this a dry run. So I must make sure that this shape is positioned to line up with the upper floor recess. Hang on, something's amiss here regarding these two bulkheads. I'm not going to worry about it because the end and the start of the bulkheads fit beautifully. What happens in between, I'm not worried about. Now here I've managed to get away with using the kit's torpedoes with lots of paint, lots of distance shots, and I think they don't look too bad. Honest, there seems to be two types here, and 6 are supplied, but only 4 are needed from what I can gather. 3 are used here, stacked, and then there's 1 placed on the gurney, or trolley, or whatever you want to call it. So this is a personal choice here, with the visible red cutaway marks. Here I will need to add a few coats. Now once this red is dry, I'll bring out that colour with a satin varnish coat. So let's do a quick dry run just to make sure before I glue these 2 internal assemblies with PVA glue. Happy that the sides fit okay, there's no clashes, I'll glue the internal bits in place. Next I'm going to remove the paint from the surface of the holes using a cotton bud dipped in extra thin. So I started with the upper hole glued first, and now that that's dried, I'll glue the lower bit. Oh, by the way, I broke off one of the hatches. Now the nose is a really bad fit with steps either side. Had to split the nose so I could splay the sides to fit flush to the hull. So with all that drying to one side, I'll make a start on that flash-ridden stand. The hull cleaned up, and that was no easy task. It took quite a few coats of black paint before I was happy with all the seams and blemishes, and there are quite a few hidden there, especially around the surface. Now of course with all that sanding I've lost a lot of surface detail. Now for the weld seams I was quite happy to lose them, but for the hatches I need to add them back. So I'm going to use this artwork that I created to recreate those hatches, somehow. I haven't thought about how I'm going to do that yet. Before I can add paint, I need to add all the control surfaces. Other surface details have already been added. These were the ones that were sanded off. Now I was going to keep the side of the kitchen tray, all the movable surfaces, but in the end I decided to fix them all into position. They just kept flopping about. For the masking of the internals I tried kitchen paper first, my first port of call, but it didn't want to play. In the end I used tracing paper, which, because it came off a roll, slid in very nicely. Now here I assume the sub will be black, but the paint guide says dark silk grey. Silk? Right. Looking at the sub kit on the box, looks like a medium grey to me. It doesn't look right. It can't be right, can it? So I spent some time looking at photographs, lots in black and white, of course, which are no use to me. The few that I did find in colour, that did show some sort of grey bluish colour, but the tones of these photographs I took with a pinch of salt. I've seen lots of subs around that era with a red anti-fouling paint guard, like the skipjack. So I decided to go for the grey, but after applying it, it looked very odd. So I have darkened it. But even then, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look sub-like. I'm sure someone out there will let me know in the comments. Please do. Still need to paint the missiles and the stand. First thing I'm going to do is slightly sand the surface with this well-worn 1000 grit back sponge. And I mean it's well worn. There's hardly anything there. Now while doing this, I forgot about adding the demarcation of the hatches. I need to do that before moving on. So with the artwork that I used, I've cut out some masks. Now for the other side. So I'm going to use the hull colour and just lighten it. And I'll dry brush, and I mean very dry brush, a shade over the masks. That's no good. Nope. That's better. I can live with that. So we have a medium colour, the grey, applied all over. We have a light colour, the highlight added. And now I need to add a dark. And I'm going to use that by adding some cooking oil with a brush. No chips are involved here and no frying, okay? Now I need to take as much oil off as possible on the brush. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way along. Then with a clean brush, I'm going to blend the oil in at the sides. So then with a little oil that I've gathered on the clean brush, I'll take that to other areas. Hopefully I'll end up with a grimy looking sub to break up that bland grey. It's a fine balance with a kit of this scale, how far to go. So the prop's done. So all done. I have missed the torpedo tubes, and I was going to add some, I think there may be some windows around the conning tower, but I'm still looking for a good reference for that. If I find it, I'll add it. If not, I'm sorry. Now, didn't really want to add decals to the sub or the stand. I want to keep it neutral. I'm still dithering about that. So you may see them in the final photograph, you may not. Now I really enjoyed building this kit, especially the internal assembly. Once I got the cleanup of the parts out of the way and the painting, building this up was really fun. I really enjoyed it. And thankfully it didn't give me too much problems. So I hope you like what I've done with the kit. I want to thank you for watching, and I do hope to see you for the next build.